Oprah walked into a dealership and faced shocking racism because of her humble appearance. Little did they know they were disrespecting one of the most powerful women in the world. What happened next will blow your mind. She became the owner of the place. Get ready for an epic story of revenge. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The gleaming floor of Elite Motors reflected the soft glow of designer lighting, creating an atmosphere of exclusivity and luxury. Sarah Thompson stood behind the mahogany reception desk, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping away at the keyboard, while she observed the usual parade of affluent customers, browsing the latest models of high-end vehicles. The air was thick with the scent of leather and success, a fragrance she had grown accustomed to over her 5 years as the head receptionist of Chicago's most prestigious car dealership. The glass doors slid open, letting in a gust of wind that carried autumn leaves across the polished tiles. A woman entered, her appearance a stark contrast to the dealership's typical clientele. Her modest attire, a weathered coat, simple jeans, and worn shoes, immediately caught Sarah's attention, though not for the usual reasons. There was something about her presence, a quiet dignity that seemed to command respect despite her understated appearance. The woman moved through the showroom with deliberate steps, her eyes studying each vehicle with careful consideration. The sales team, usually quick to approach potential customers, remained clustered near their desks, exchanging knowing glances and whispered comments. Marcus Chen, their top seller who had just closed a deal on a luxury SUV, barely looked up from his smartphone. Probably just window shopping, Sarah overheard James Wilson, another salesman, mutter to his colleague. "You know how these people are." The woman approached a sleek black sedan, one of their most expensive models. Her reflection in the car's pristine surface revealed a face that held wisdom in its features, though Sarah couldn't quite place why this detail struck her as significant. The woman's hand traced the curve of the hood, appreciating the craftsmanship with the eye of someone who understood true value. 20 minutes passed, and not a single member of the sales team had acknowledged her presence. Sarah felt a growing discomfort in her chest, recognizing the familiar pattern of prejudice she had witnessed countless times before. She wanted to help, but her position at the reception desk prevented her from engaging directly with customers, a rule strictly enforced by Richard Sterling, the dealership's manager. Finally, the woman approached the reception desk. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a warmth and authority that made Sarah sit up straighter. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'm interested in the Black Diamond edition. Would someone be available to assist me?" Before Sarah could respond, James Wilson sauntered over, his expression barely masking his disdain. "We're quite busy at the moment," he said, not bothering to make eye contact. "Perhaps you'd like to come back another time, or maybe visit one of our more affordable locations." The woman's expression remained unchanged, though something flickered in her eyes, not anger or hurt, but something more complex. Understanding, perhaps, or determination. She thanked them politely and turned to leave, her dignity intact despite the clear dismissal. As she reached the door, Sarah heard Marcus snicker. Probably couldn't even afford the monthly insurance on that car. The woman paused briefly, her hand on the door handle before stepping out into the autumn afternoon. Sarah watched her go, a sense of shame crawling up her spine at having witnessed such blatant discrimination without speaking up. What happened? Next would change everything at Elite Motors, though none of them knew it yet. The woman returned to her modest car parked across the street, but instead of driving away, she made a phone call. Her voice, carried faintly through the dealership's windows, held no trace of bitterness or revenge, only purpose. That evening, as Sarah was preparing to leave, Richard Sterling called an emergency staff meeting. His face was unusually pale as he clutched a stack of papers in his trembling hands. The sales team gathered around, their expressions ranging from annoyed to curious. "I've just received some unexpected news," Sterling announced, his voice unsteady. "Elite Motors has been acquired by a new owner." The room erupted in murmurs and confused exchanges. Elite Motors had been family-owned for 3 generations. This seemed impossible. The paperwork was finalized this afternoon, Sterling continued, his eyes scanning the documents as if hoping the words might change. The new owner will be visiting tomorrow morning to discuss the changes. Sarah noticed James and Marcus exchange worried glances. Something in Sterling's tone suggested this wasn't a routine corporate acquisition. "Who bought us?" Marcus asked, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. Sterling looked up, his face ashen. "I'm not at liberty to say, but I've been informed that every member of staff is expected to be present tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. No exceptions." As the meeting dispersed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to unfold. She gathered her belongings and headed for the bus stop, her mind returning to the woman in the modest coat. There had been something familiar about her, something Sarah couldn't quite place. It wasn't until she was halfway home that it hit her. She had seen that face before, not in person, but on magazine covers and television screens. The realization made her stop dead in her tracks, her heart pounding with the implications of what tomorrow might bring. The autumn wind whipped around her, carrying with it the promise of change as the sun set behind Chicago's towering skyline. The next morning dawned grey and misty, a typical Chicago autumn day that seemed to mirror the tense atmosphere at Elite Motors. Sarah arrived early, her stomach in knots as she watched her colleagues file in one by one. The sales team looked unusually subdued, their designer suits and confident smirks replaced by nervous glances and hushed conversations. Richard Sterling paced the showroom floor, checking his watch every few minutes while barking orders at the cleaning staff to ensure every surface sparkled. James Wilson had traded his usual arrogant stance for a more subdued demeanor, while Marcus Chen sat at his desk, absently straightening his already impeccable tie. At precisely 9 a.m., the glass doors slid open. The woman from yesterday entered, wearing the same modest outfit, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her walked a distinguished-looking man in a tailored suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents. The woman's presence commanded attention in a way that had nothing to do with her clothes or status. It was the quiet confidence she exuded, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Sterling rushed forward, his face a mask of professional courtesy that couldn't quite hide his anxiety. "Welcome to Elite Motors," he began, but the woman raised her hand slightly, silencing him with the gentlest of gestures. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice carrying across the showroom with natural authority. "I believe we met yesterday, though under different circumstances." She smiled, and in that moment, several gasps of recognition echoed through the room. "I'm Michelle Walker, and as of yesterday, I'm the new owner of Elite Motors." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah watched as James Wilson's face drained of color, while Marcus Chen seemed to shrink in his expensive Italian suit. Michelle Walker wasn't just any successful businesswoman. She was a legend in Chicago's business community, known for turning struggling companies into industry leaders, all while maintaining a reputation for integrity and social responsibility. "Yesterday," Michelle continued, her voice calm but firm, "I came here as a potential customer, wanting to experience this dealership as any other person would. What I witnessed was deeply disappointing, but not surprising. Discrimination, prejudice, and arrogance have no place in any business, let alone one that claims to be elite." She moved through the showroom, her steps measured and purposeful. "Mr. Sterling," she addressed the manager, who had begun to sweat visibly, "your leadership has fostered a culture of exclusion and bias. This ends today. You're dismissed, effective immediately." Sterling opened his mouth to protest, but the man with the briefcase stepped forward, presenting him with a document. Michelle turned to face James Wilson and Marcus Chen. "Gentlemen, your behavior yesterday was not only unprofessional, but deeply offensive. You too are no longer employed here." The silence was broken only by the sound of papers being signed and personal items being collected. As the dismissed employees made their way to the exit, Michelle's expression softened slightly. "I hope you use this as an opportunity for reflection and growth." Once they had left, Michelle addressed the remaining staff. "Change begins today. Elite Motors will live up to its name not through exclusivity or discrimination, but through exceptional service to all customers, regardless of their appearance, background, or circumstances. She walked over to Sarah's desk, surprising her with a warm smile. "Sarah Thompson, isn't it? Yesterday you were the only person who showed any discomfort with how I was treated. Though you didn't speak up, I saw it in your eyes. Sometimes the hardest part of change is finding the courage to challenge the status quo." Sarah felt her cheeks flush with a mixture of shame and hope. "I wanted to say something," she admitted. "I should have said something." Michelle nodded understandingly. "Which is exactly why I'd like to offer you a new position. Not as a receptionist, but as our customer experience director. Your empathy and awareness make you perfect for the role." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "Me? But I don't have the experience." "Experience can be gained," Michelle replied. "Character is innate. You have the heart for this role. Everything else can be learned." As the morning progressed, Michelle outlined her vision for the new Elite Motors. The focus would be on creating an inclusive environment where every customer felt valued and respected. She announced new training programs, mentorship opportunities, and a complete overhaul of the company's hiring practices. The remaining staff listened intently, some with tears in their eyes, others with growing excitement. This wasn't just a change in management. It was a complete transformation of everything Elite Motors had represented. By lunchtime, the old signs of elitism and exclusivity had been taken down, replaced by a simple but powerful message: welcome all. Sarah sat at her new desk, still processing the morning's events, when Michelle approached her one last time. "Remember," she said softly, "true luxury isn't about the price tag or the brand. It's about how we make people feel when they walk through those doors." The weeks following Michelle Walker's takeover of Elite Motors brought sweeping changes that rippled through every aspect of the dealership. The once sterile, intimidating showroom underwent a subtle but significant transformation. Gone were the stark white walls and harsh lighting, replaced by warm earth tones and comfortable seating areas where customers could relax and discuss their options without feeling pressured. Sarah Thompson embraced her new role as Customer Experience Director with determination and vision. Her first major initiative was to redesign the customer journey from the ground up. "We need to make everyone feel welcome," she explained during a staff meeting, her confidence growing with each passing day. "It's not just about selling cars, it's about creating connections." The remaining employees watched as Sarah unveiled her plans for a revolutionary approach to car sales. Traditional commission-based incentives were replaced with customer satisfaction metrics. The focus shifted from pushing the most expensive vehicles to finding the perfect match for each client's needs and budget. One morning, a young woman named Rosa Martinez walked into the showroom. She was a first-generation American who had recently started her own small business. Her clothes were simple but neat, and she carried herself with quiet determination. In the old Elite Motors, she might have been ignored or dismissed. Instead, Sarah personally greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome to Elite Motors," Sarah said, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah. How can we help you today?" Rosa hesitated, her fingers nervously clutching her purse. "I've been to 5 dealerships," she admitted. "None of them took me seriously when I mentioned my budget and background, but I heard things were different here now." Sarah gestured to a comfortable seating area. "Things are very different here. Tell me about your business and what you're looking for in a vehicle." Over cups of freshly brewed coffee, Rosa shared her story. She had started a successful catering company specializing in authentic Mexican cuisine. Her business was growing, and she needed a reliable vehicle for deliveries and client meetings. Her budget was modest, but her determination was unwavering. Michelle Walker, who had been observing from her office, joined them quietly. She listened, as Rosa described her journey from helping in her parents' small restaurant to building her own thriving business. The passion in Rosa's voice reminded Michelle of her own early struggles and triumphs. "Ms. Martinez," Michelle interjected gently, "what if we could offer you something more than just a car? What if we could help your business grow?" Rosa looked confused but intrigued. Michelle continued, Elite Motors is launching a new community partnership program. We're looking for local businesses to cater our events and staff meetings. Your story and your dedication impress me. Would you be interested in becoming our preferred catering partner? Tears welled up in Rosa's eyes. Are you serious? This would change everything. Sarah watched as Michelle and Rosa worked out the details of both the catering partnership and a financing plan for a practical delivery van that fit Rosa's budget perfectly. This was exactly the kind of transformation she had hoped to see, business decisions driven by human connection rather than prejudice and profit margins. The story of Rosa Martinez spread quickly through Chicago's business community. Soon, Elite Motors became known not just as a car dealership, but as a place where dreams were supported and barriers were broken down. Other local business owners, particularly from underserved communities, began to visit, drawn by the promise of genuine respect and opportunity. One afternoon, as Sarah was reviewing customer feedback reports, she noticed a trend. Their satisfaction scores had skyrocketed, but more importantly, the comments revealed a deeper change. Customers weren't just talking about cars. They were sharing stories of feeling valued, understood, and supported. This is exactly what I hope to see, Michelle said, reviewing the reports with Sarah. But we're just getting started. She revealed her next initiative, a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Elite Motors would provide not just vehicles, but business guidance, networking opportunities, and support to help them succeed. We're not just selling cars anymore, Michelle explained to the assembled staff. We're investing in people and their potential. Every person who walks through those doors carries dreams and aspirations. Our job is to help those dreams take flight. The transformation of Elite Motors attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Local news outlets began running stories about the dealership's innovative approach to business and community engagement. Other companies started reaching out, eager to learn from their example. Sarah found herself giving presentations to business groups about the power of inclusive customer service. Each time she shared the story of Elite Motors' transformation, she remembered that day when Michelle Walker first walked in, underestimated and ignored. That memory fueled her commitment to ensure no customer ever felt that way again. As autumn turned to winter, the showroom buzzed with a new kind of energy. The sales team, now diverse and deeply trained in empathetic customer service, worked tirelessly to understand each client's unique story. The walls displayed photos of successful partnerships and community events, replacing the cold luxury car posters of the past. Every morning, before the doors opened, Sarah would walk through the showroom, straightening displays and greeting early arriving staff. She often paused at the spot where she first saw Michelle Walker enter, remembering how that moment had changed, not just the dealership, but her own life's trajectory. The lesson was clear. True transformation begins with a single act of courage, and success is measured not in dollars, but in lives touched and barriers broken. 6 months after Michelle Walker's transformation of Elite Motors began, the dealership had become something no one could have predicted. The showroom, once a symbol of exclusivity, now hosted weekly community events. Local artists displayed their work on the walls, and the sound of children's laughter often filled the space during family-friendly weekend workshops about car safety and maintenance. Sarah's innovative customer experience programs had become a model for businesses across Chicago. She remembered her early days of uncertainty, when the weight of her new role had seemed overwhelming. Now, watching a diverse group of customers and staff interact with genuine warmth, she knew they had created something extraordinary. One crisp spring morning, an unexpected visitor arrived at Elite Motors. James Wilson, the former salesman who had been dismissed months ago, stood hesitantly at the entrance. Sarah noticed him first, his usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, his confidence replaced by humility. "May I speak with Ms. Walker?" he asked quietly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Michelle, who had seen him enter from her office, approached with measured steps. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice neutral but not unkind, "what brings you here?" James swallowed hard before speaking. "After you dismissed me, I was angry. I blamed everyone but myself. But then I started seeing the changes happening here, the news stories, the community impact. It made me realize how wrong I had been. He pulled out a worn notebook from his jacket. I've spent the last few months volunteering at a community center, teaching financial literacy to young adults. It opened my eyes to the prejudices I carried, the opportunities I denied others because of my own biases. Michelle listened intently. As James continued, "I'm not here to ask for my old job back. I'm here because I want to learn, to be part of real change, even if it means starting over completely." Sarah watched as Michelle considered his words. The showroom had fallen silent. The morning's activities paused as staff and customers alike sensed the significance of this moment. "James," Michelle finally said, "redemption begins with acknowledgement and continues with action. Your voluntary work shows you're serious about change. We're launching a new program to provide financial education to first-time car buyers. Would you be interested in helping develop it?" The genuine smile that spread across James's face was nothing like his old practiced sales grin. "Thank you," he said softly. "I won't let you down." This moment of reconciliation sparked yet another evolution at Elite Motors. The dealership began actively reaching out to former employees who had been dismissed, offering them chances to learn and grow through community service and training programs. Not all accepted, but those who did brought valuable insights to the transformation process. The impact extended far beyond the dealership's walls. Other businesses in Chicago began to examine their own practices and biases. Michelle and Sarah found themselves invited to speak at corporate events and conferences, sharing their story of how treating people with dignity could transform not just a business, but an entire community. Rosa Martinez's catering business had flourished through her partnership with Elite Motors. She now employed 15 people and had expanded her services to include corporate events across the city. Her success inspired Michelle to launch an entrepreneur's support network, connecting successful business owners with aspiring ones from underserved communities. One day, as Sarah was reviewing applications for their latest community initiative, she discovered a familiar name. Marcus Chen, another former salesman, had submitted a proposal for a program teaching automotive skills to at-risk youth. His application included a heartfelt letter about his journey of self-discovery and desire to make amends. "People can change," Michelle observed, reading the application over Sarah's shoulder. "Sometimes they just need to see what's possible when we break down the barriers we've built around ourselves." The dealership's transformation had created a ripple effect throughout Chicago's business community. Companies that had once focused solely on profit margins began implementing similar community-focused initiatives. The city's Chamber of Commerce created a special award category for businesses that demonstrated exceptional commitment to inclusive practices, with Elite Motors winning the inaugural honor. Sarah's own growth mirrored that of the dealership. From a hesitant receptionist afraid to speak up, she had become a confident leader who regularly mentored other businesses in customer experience and inclusive practices. Her office wall displayed thank you letters from people whose lives had been touched by Elite Motors' new approach. As spring bloomed in Chicago, Elite Motors prepared for its biggest initiative yet, a citywide program to provide transportation solutions for small business owners from disadvantaged communities. The program would combine vehicle financing with business mentorship and networking opportunities. Looking out over the showroom floor, now buzzing with a diverse mix of customers, staff, and community members, Sarah reflected on how far they had come. The luxury cars still gleamed under the showroom lights, but they were no longer barriers to entry. Instead, they had become symbols of possibility, tokens of dreams that could be achieved when people were given a fair chance. 1 year to the day after Michelle Walker first walked into Elite Motors, the dealership was preparing for a special event. The showroom had been transformed into an elegant venue for the first annual Chicago Business Innovation Awards, which would celebrate companies that had embraced inclusive practices and community engagement. Sarah stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone as she prepared to address the gathered crowd. The audience was a testament to the change they had created, a diverse mix of business leaders, community members, and aspiring entrepreneurs. In the front row, Rosa Martinez sat proudly beside her parents, her catering company having provided the evening's refreshments. James Wilson and Marcus Chen, now valued members of the Elite Motors Community Outreach Team, helped guide guests to their seats. "A year ago," Sarah began, her voice steady and confident, "I stood behind a desk and watched injustice happen. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. But sometimes our greatest failures can lead to our most important transformations." She gestured to Michelle, who sat quietly in the audience wearing the same modest coat she had worn that fateful day. When Michelle Walker walked into Elite Motors, she didn't just buy a dealership. She sparked a revolution in how we think, about business, community, and human dignity. The screen behind Sarah lit up with images of the past year's achievements, the youth mentorship program that had helped 30 students secure internships, the small business initiative that had provided transportation solutions to over 100 entrepreneurs, and the financial education workshops that had reached thousands of community members. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Sarah continued, isn't in these numbers. It's in the stories of individual transformation, like David Martinez, who bought his first delivery van from us and now owns a fleet of eco-friendly delivery vehicles, or Jennifer Chen, who participated in our youth program and just became the youngest certified mechanic in Chicago's history. Michelle took the stage next, her presence as commanding as ever, though tempered with warmth. When I walked into Elite Motors that day, I wasn't just testing the dealership's customer service. I was looking for hope that we could create real change in how businesses treat people. What I found was disappointment, but also opportunity. She paused, scanning the room before continuing. Today, I see that hope reflected in every face in this room. We've proven that success doesn't have to come at the cost of our humanity. That luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about creating opportunities for everyone to rise. The evening continued with awards presentations celebrating businesses that had followed Elite Motors' example. A local bakery that had implemented a training program for formerly incarcerated individuals, a tech startup that had created coding workshops in underserved neighborhoods, a real estate agency that had revolutionized its lending practices to support first-time homebuyers from all backgrounds. As the event drew to a close, Sarah found herself standing in the exact spot where she had first watched Michelle enter the dealership. A young woman approached her, wearing clothes that reminded Sarah of herself not so long ago, professional but modest, hopeful but uncertain. "Ms. Thompson," the woman said hesitantly, "I've been following Elite Motors' story. I work at another dealership across town and, well, I see the same things you used to see, the same prejudices, the same discrimination. I want to make a difference, but I'm scared." Sarah smiled warmly, remembering her own journey. "Change begins with a single voice," she said, taking the woman's hand. "And you don't have to do it alone. We're here to help." Michelle joined them, overhearing the conversation. "Perhaps it's time to expand our reach," she suggested, her eyes twinkling. "How would you feel about helping us open a second location?" The young woman's eyes widened in surprise and hope, mirroring Sarah's expression from a year ago. This was how real change happened, one person, one moment, one decision at a time. As the evening wound down, Michelle gathered everyone for a final announcement. Today marks not just a celebration of what we've achieved, but a beginning of something even bigger. Elite Motors is launching the Business Transformation Initiative, a nationwide program to help companies reimagine their approach to customer service and community engagement. The applause that followed was thunderous, but it was the tears in people's eyes that truly told the story. This wasn't just about selling cars anymore. It was about changing lives, breaking down barriers, and creating a world where everyone had the opportunity to succeed. Sarah looked around the room, at the faces filled with hope and possibility, and knew that their story was far from over. It was just the beginning of a much larger transformation, one that would continue to ripple out into the world, touching lives and changing hearts, one person at a time.